My name is Ethan Caldwell. I relocated to the remote plains of northern Montana roughly 6 years ago. It was the first time in my adult life that I had truly lived by myself, and if I'm being honest, it felt long overdue. My family had been pushing me for years to move out and stand on my own 2 feet. I'm not the most outgoing person, never have been, so the thought of settling down in a quiet, isolated spot actually sounded perfect to me. The small cabin I eventually found sat on a wide stretch of open land in one of the harshest winter regions of the state. The nearest neighbor was at least a half-mile away across snow-covered fields. That distance didn't bother me at all. In fact, for the first few years, the solitude was exactly what I needed. I went to my job at the local hardware store, came home, kept to myself, and rarely interacted with anyone. I never bothered introducing myself to the handful of people who lived nearby. Out here, houses were so far apart that you could easily go weeks without seeing another human face. Life was peaceful, until one brutal afternoon in late January changed everything. I was finishing up my shift at work when the snow began to fall. At first, it was light, almost gentle. But within an hour, the wind howled in, visibility dropped to nearly zero, and the roads turned treacherous. My manager finally told all of us to pack up and head home before it got any worse. I drove an old but reliable 4-wheel drive pickup, so I wasn't overly concerned. I had handled plenty of bad winters before. Still, certain stretches of the country road made me grip the wheel tighter than usual. When I finally pulled into my long driveway, relief washed over me. But as I approached my front door, I discovered the lock was completely frozen shut. I stood there in the biting wind, trying everything, breathing on the keyhole, pounding on the door, even using the heat from my hands. Nothing worked. I retreated to the truck, cranked up the heater, and told myself the storm might ease up soon. I could wait it out. 10 minutes later, I realized how dangerous that idea was. Snow had already piled up halfway up the sides of the truck. If I stayed any longer, I might not be able to drive out at all. Worse, the gas would eventually run low, leaving me trapped in a freezing metal box in the middle of nowhere. I had no one nearby to call for help. My family lived several hours away, and I didn't know any of my neighbors well enough to reach out. My only real choice was to hike to the closest house and ask for shelter. The walk was miserable. The wind cut through my coat like knives, and by the time I reached the small, weathered cabin about a half-mile away, I was shaking uncontrollably. It was a modest, single-story place, looking a bit run down even through the swirling snow. I banged on the door as hard as I could. After what felt like forever, just as I was about to turn away and try the next house, the door flew open with surprising force. A man in his late 40s stood there. He had an ordinary, forgettable face, the kind you wouldn't notice in a crowd. He stared at me silently for a moment before introducing himself as Harlan. I quickly explained my situation: frozen door, stuck truck, desperate for somewhere warm. He nodded slowly and stepped aside, letting me in without much question. I should have felt grateful, but something about him felt immediately wrong. It was hard to say exactly what at first. The house was warm, and that was all that mattered in that freezing moment. He gestured for me to sit on an old sofa while he took a worn armchair across from me. We tried making small talk, or rather, I tried. Harlan answered my questions, but his mind seemed somewhere else. His eyes darted around the room, from me to the floor to the ceiling, then over his shoulder, never settling for long. He would start speaking and then trail off mid-sentence, staring blankly at the wall as if seeing something I couldn't. At first, I thought he was just uncomfortable having a stranger in his home. That would be understandable. But the longer I sat there, the more uneasy I grew. I decided I wanted minimal interaction. I told him I was exhausted and asked if I could sleep on the couch. He seemed almost relieved and agreed right away. I asked him to turn off the lights. He did, but then he didn't leave. He just stood in the doorway for a long, uncomfortable minute, completely still and silent in the dark. I pretended to drift off, eyes half closed. Eventually, he turned and disappeared down the short hallway toward what I assumed was his bedroom. I really did try to sleep. The couch was surprisingly comfortable, and I was dead tired, but a deep sense of wrongness kept jolting me awake. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd start to doze and then snap back, convinced I had heard something. About an hour later, the sounds became impossible to ignore. Thumping and scraping noises came from directly above me. At first, I told myself it was just snow shifting on the roof. Heavy storms do that. But these sounds felt deliberate, and that made no sense. The house was clearly only one story. There was no attic or second floor for anyone to walk on. The noises continued, sporadic but persistent. Then came a much louder thump, so forceful it made me bolt upright on the couch. The second I sat up, I saw him. Harlan was standing silently in the doorway again, watching me in the darkness. He must have been there for some time. My skin crawled. Before I could speak, he charged at me like an animal. He leapt over the back of the couch and tackled me hard to the floor. We struggled violently on the old carpet. He was much stronger than he looked. He tried to lock me in a chokehold while screaming for me to stop fighting. He kept ranting about her, saying she was lonely and that I would be good company for her. I wasn't listening to the words. I was fighting for my life. Somehow, I managed to shove him off with a desperate burst of strength. I grabbed my coat and sprinted for the front door, not even bothering to put it on. As I ran out into the blizzard, I heard him yell behind me, something insane about how she wasn't going to be happy. I didn't stop running until I reached the next house. A kind, middle-aged couple answered the door, took one look at my terrified face, and pulled me inside. I spent the rest of that night on their couch. The next morning, over coffee, I told them everything. When I described Harlan's house, the husband's face went pale. He asked if the man's name was Harlan. When I nodded, he shared a story that made my blood run cold. About 10 years earlier, Harlan's wife vanished without a trace. No real investigation ever happened, but everyone in the scattered community quietly believed he had done something terrible to her. Her body was never found. I connected the horrifying dots instantly, but said nothing. I later reported the incident to the local authorities, but I doubt anything came of it. To this day, I still live in the same cabin. Nothing else has happened since that night, but every time I drive past Harlan's place, a chill runs down my spine. I think about whatever awful thing might still be hidden inside that quiet, snow-covered house. My name is Rebecca Holt. I am a freelance photographer from Oregon, but 3 winters ago I took a 6-month assignment in the remote wilderness of northern Idaho. The job was simple: capture the raw beauty of the mountains during the dead of winter for a nature magazine. I thought it would be peaceful. I had no idea it would become the most terrifying experience of my life. I rented a small wooden cabin deep in the Clearwater National Forest. The nearest town was over 20 miles away, and the closest neighbor, an old trapper named Silas, lived about a mile down the narrow forest road. For the first month, everything went perfectly. I spent my days hiking with snowshoes, taking photos of frozen waterfalls and snow-laden pine trees. At night, I'd sit by the wood stove, edit pictures, and enjoy the absolute silence. Then came the storm that changed everything. It started on a Thursday afternoon in mid-February. The sky turned steel gray by noon. By 3 o'clock, the wind was screaming through the trees, and snow fell so thick I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. I was out shooting when the blizzard hit. I barely made it back to the cabin. My truck was parked right outside, but within an hour, it was completely buried under drifting snow. Power lines snapped somewhere down the mountain. My generator ran out of fuel faster than I expected. By evening, the cabin was growing dangerously cold. I knew I couldn't stay there alone with no heat. The temperature was dropping below 0, and the wind chill made it feel like 40 below. I bundled up in every layer I owned, grabbed a flashlight and my emergency pack, and decided to walk to Silas's place. I had met him only once before, a quiet, bearded man in his 60s who mostly kept to himself. He seemed harmless enough. The walk through the forest was hell. Snow came up to my thighs, branches whipped my face. Every few minutes I had to stop and check my compass because the trail had vanished. After almost an hour of fighting the storm, I finally saw the faint glow of a lantern through the trees. Silas's cabin looked even older than mine. Dark logs, a sagging roof, and smoke curling weakly from the chimney. I pounded on the heavy wooden door. It opened almost immediately. Silas stood there holding an oil lantern, his face half hidden in shadow. He didn't look surprised to see me. Without a word, he stepped back and let me inside. The warmth hit me like a wave. I almost cried with relief. "Thank you," I gasped, pulling off my snow-covered gloves. "My power's out, generator's dead. I didn't know where else to go." Silas nodded slowly. "Storm's a bad one. You can stay." His voice was low and raspy, like he didn't use it often. He pointed to a rickety chair by the fireplace. "Sit, warm up." I sat down and looked around. The cabin was cluttered with animal traps, old rifles, and shelves full of jars containing strange, dark liquids. A large bearskin rug covered most of the floor. Something about the place felt off, but I told myself it was just the storm making me paranoid. Silas offered me a cup of coffee from an old pot on the stove. It tasted bitter, but it warmed my frozen hands. We sat in silence for a while. Then he started talking, short sentences, never looking directly at me. "Wife used to hate these storms," he muttered. "Said the woods got loud at night." I smiled politely. "Does she live here too?" Silas stared into the file for a long moment. "She did. Long time ago." He didn't say anything else. I tried to change the subject and asked about the storm. He only shrugged. After some time, I told him I was exhausted and asked if I could sleep on the small couch near the fireplace. He agreed and disappeared into the back room. I wrapped myself in the blanket he gave me and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, I heard it, a soft scratching sound coming from under the floorboards. At first, I thought it was mice. Then it grew louder, scraping, dragging, like something heavy being pulled slowly across dirt. I sat up, heart hammering. The sound moved from one end of the cabin to the other, directly beneath me. I looked toward the back room where Silas had gone. No light, no movement. I told myself it was the wind or settling snow. But then the scratching stopped, and a low moan rose up instead, a weak, desperate moan. My blood turned to ice. I quietly put on my boots, not daring to make a sound. Just as I reached for my coat, the back room door creaked open. Silas stood there in the darkness, staring at me. His eyes looked different now, glassy, unfocused. "Going somewhere?" he asked quietly. I heard something, under the floor." He smiled for the first time. It was a small, sad smile. "She gets restless when there's company, wants to come up and say hello." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Silas took a slow step forward. "My wife. Been down there 8 years now. Kept her warm, kept her company, but she's lonely again." I backed toward the door. My hand found the latch. Silas moved faster than I expected for an old man. He lunged at me, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "You'll stay with her," he growled. "She needs a friend." I swung my flashlight hard and cracked it against the side of his head. He staggered but didn't let go. We crashed into the table, jars shattered, dark liquid spilled everywhere. I kicked him in the knee as hard as I could and finally broke free. I threw the door open and ran straight into the blizzard. Behind me, I heard Silas screaming my name, then screaming at her not to be angry. I didn't look back. I ran blindly through the trees, falling, getting up, falling again. Branches tore at my face. My lungs burned from the freezing air. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, maybe. Eventually, I collapsed against a large pine tree, too exhausted to move. That's where the search team found me 2 days later, half frozen, barely conscious. When I finally told the police what happened, they searched Silas's cabin. They found the trap door under the bearskin rug. Beneath it was a small, dug-out cellar. Inside, they discovered the remains of a woman, Silas's wife, who had been reported missing 8 years earlier. They also found photographs of other women who had disappeared in the area over the past decade. Silas was never caught. He vanished into the forest during the storm and was never seen again. I left Idaho the moment I could travel. I still have nightmares about scratching sounds coming from under the floor. And sometimes, when the wind howls at night, I swear I can still hear that low, lonely moan, calling for company.
I never thought I would be the kind of person who ran from a nightmare only to walk straight into another one. But that's exactly what happened to me during the winter of 2024 in the frozen backwoods of northern Minnesota. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm a long-haul trucker by profession, but that winter I was between jobs and staying at my uncle's old hunting cabin near the Canadian border. The plan was simple: fix up the place, cut some firewood, and enjoy a few quiet months away from people. The cabin sat on the edge of a dense pine forest, with the nearest neighbor, an elderly widow named Evelyn, living almost 3/4 of a mile through thick woods. I had waved at her once when I first arrived. She seemed friendly enough, waving back with a kind smile. The blizzard came without much warning. One moment, the sky was clear and starry. The next, it was like the world had turned white and angry. I was outside splitting logs when the wind suddenly picked up. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. I barely made it back inside the cabin. The power went out shortly after dark. My generator struggled for a couple of hours before running out of fuel. The temperature inside dropped so fast I could see my breath. I knew I had to find help or I wouldn't last the night. So I put on every piece of clothing I owned, grabbed a heavy flashlight, and started the dangerous trek toward Evelyn's house. The walk was brutal. Snowdrifts swallowed my legs up to the knees. Branches whipped against my face. Several times I lost the trail completely and had to backtrack using my phone's compass until the battery died. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the warm yellow glow of a window through the trees. Relief flooded through me. I stumbled up to the porch and banged on the door. It opened almost immediately. Evelyn stood there, a small woman in her late 70s, wrapped in a thick shawl. Her silver hair was neatly braided, and she held an old oil lamp. She didn't seem startled at all. "Oh dear," she said softly, "these storms are merciless. You'll stay here tonight, no arguments." I thanked her profusely and sat by the stove, letting the warmth seep back into my frozen body. For a while, everything felt safe. Evelyn chatted pleasantly about her late husband, how they had lived in this same cabin for almost 50 years. She even showed me old photo albums. Her voice was gentle and grandmotherly. I started to relax. But then little things began to feel wrong. She kept glancing toward the back hallway as if expecting someone to walk out. When I asked if she lived alone, she smiled strangely and said, "Not really. The children are still here." I assumed she meant grandchildren who visited sometimes. I didn't think much of it. Later that night, she insisted I sleep in the guest room at the end of the hall. "It's warmer back there," she said. I was too tired to argue. The room was small but comfortable, with a heavy quilt on the bed. I fell asleep almost instantly. I woke up sometime after midnight to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard soft footsteps in the hallway, small, quick steps, like children running, then giggling,
Faint, childish giggling right outside my door. My heart started pounding. Evelyn had said she lived alone. I sat up slowly. The whispering grew louder. It sounded like 2 or 3 small voices arguing. One of them clearly said, "He's awake. Mama won't like it." I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the door. When I opened it, the hallway was empty. The whispering stopped instantly. I stood there for a long minute, listening. Nothing. I told myself it was just the storm playing tricks on my mind. As I turned to go back to bed, I noticed something odd. The door at the very end of the hallway, which I had assumed was a closet, was slightly ajar. A cold draft came from behind it. I walked over and pushed it open. Behind the door was a narrow staircase leading down into a basement. I hadn't realized the cabin even had one. The air smelled damp and earthy. I shone my light down the stairs and saw children's toys scattered on the dirt floor. Old wooden blocks, a faded doll, a rusty tricycle. Everything looked decades old. Then I heard Evelyn's voice right behind me. "Curious, aren't you?" I spun around. She was standing only a foot away, still smiling that sweet, grandmotherly smile. But her eyes were different now, cold and empty. "They've been waiting for a new friend," she whispered. "It's been so long since the last one stayed." I backed away. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn stepped closer. "My children. They got sick during the big storm of '98. I couldn't let them go, so I kept them warm down there. They get lonely sometimes. They need someone to play with." My blood ran cold. I remembered hearing local stories about a woman who lost her entire family in a blizzard years ago. People said she had gone mad with grief. Evelyn reached out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Stay with them, just for a little while." I yanked my arm free and shoved her hard. She stumbled backward but didn't fall. I ran for the front door, knocking over furniture in the dark. Behind me, I heard her calling in a sing-song voice. "Come back, children. Don't let him leave." I burst out into the blizzard and ran blindly into the forest. The wind screamed around me. I could hear small footsteps crunching in the snow behind me. Impossible, childish footsteps that kept pace no matter how fast I ran. I don't remember how I survived the night. I eventually collapsed near a frozen stream. A snowmobile search team found me the next afternoon, barely alive. When the police searched Evelyn's cabin, they found the basement. 3 small skeletons wrapped carefully in blankets, preserved by the cold. They also found the remains of 4 other missing hikers and travelers who had disappeared in the area over the past 20 years. Evelyn was never found. Some say she's still out there in the woods, waiting for the next storm and the next lonely traveler who needs shelter. The forest seemed endless that night. Every direction I ran looked the same. White walls of driving snow and dark pine shadows. My legs burned. My lungs felt like they were freezing from the inside. But I couldn't stop. Behind me, those small footsteps kept crunching through the snow. Sometimes they sounded close, sometimes they faded, but they never completely disappeared. Children's laughter mixed with the howling wind, high-pitched and wrong. I kept whispering to myself, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But the cold was real, the fear was real, and Evelyn's voice calling out my name in that sweet, terrible sing-song way was real too. "Marcus, come back, sweetheart. The children miss you already." I tripped over a buried log and fell face first into a deep drift. Snow filled my mouth and nose. For a moment, I just lay there, too exhausted to move. That's when I heard breathing right next to my ear, small, quick breaths like a child kneeling beside me. I screamed and thrashed wildly, swinging my arms in the darkness. There was nothing there, only snow. I forced myself up and kept moving. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually, I saw a faint light ahead, not warm like Evelyn's cabin, but a cold blue-white glow. As I got closer, I realized it was headlights. A truck had slid off the road and was half buried in the snowbank. The driver's door was open. Hope surged through me. I ran toward it, shouting for help. Inside the cab sat a man in his 40s, slumped over the wheel. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. He was alive, but barely conscious. "Hey, wake up, kid. We have to get out of here." He groaned and slowly opened his eyes. "Storm hit me bad. You okay, kid?" I quickly told him what happened at Evelyn's cabin, the basement, the skeletons, the children that wouldn't stay dead. He stared at me like I was crazy at first, then his face changed. "Old lady Evelyn?" he whispered. "People around here been talking about her for years. Said she lost her mind after the '98 blizzard, but I never believed the stories about the kids." He tried to start the truck, but the engine was dead. Snow had packed too deep around the tires. We were both trapped now. "We gotta walk," he said. "There's a ranger station about 2 miles north. If we follow the road, we might make it." We linked arms and started moving together. His name was Derek. He was a local logger who had been trying to get home before the storm got worse. Having another person with me made the terror slightly more bearable. We talked to stay awake, anything to keep from hearing those little footsteps again. But they came back. This time, they weren't behind us. They were all around us, circling, giggling, whispering my name. Derek heard them too. His face went white. "What the hell is that?" he breathed. "Keep moving," I said. "Don't listen." We picked up the pace. The snow was getting deeper. Derek started slowing down. His head wound was bleeding again, leaving red drops that froze instantly on the ground. I could tell he was fading. Then we both saw it at the same time, a small figure standing in the middle of the road ahead. It looked like a little boy, maybe 8 years old, wearing old-fashioned winter clothes from decades ago. He was perfectly still, smiling at us with black, empty eyes. Derek stopped dead. "Jesus Christ!" The boy raised one tiny hand and waved. Behind him, 2 more shapes appeared, a girl and another smaller child. They started walking toward us. Their feet didn't seem to sink in the snow. I grabbed Derek's arm. "Run!" We turned and sprinted the other way. The children followed. Their laughter grew louder, echoing all around us. I looked back once and saw Evelyn standing with them now, holding the smallest child's hand, smiling that same sweet grandmother smile. We ran until Derek collapsed. I tried to pull him up, but he was too heavy. "Go," he gasped. "Leave me. Tell someone what happened here." I didn't want to leave him, but I had no choice. I kept running. The ranger station finally appeared through the trees, a small wooden building with a weak light in the window. I banged on the door, screaming for help. An old ranger opened it. He took one look at my frozen, terrified face and pulled me inside. I collapsed on the floor, babbling everything. Evelyn, the basement, the children in the snow, Derek left behind. The ranger's face turned grim. He radioed for backup, but the storm was still too strong for helicopters. They would have to wait until morning. I stayed at the station all night. The ranger gave me dry clothes and hot soup. He told me the full story while we waited. Evelyn had indeed lost her 3 children in the 1998 blizzard. She refused to bury them. Instead, she kept their bodies in the cold basement, talking to them like they were still alive. Over the years, hikers and lost drivers would disappear near her property. No one could ever prove anything. Around 4 in the morning, the wind died down for a few minutes. That was when we both heard it clearly. Children laughing right outside the station window. The ranger grabbed his shotgun. We looked out but saw nothing except swirling snow. At first light, a search team went out. They found Derek's body half a mile from the station. He was frozen solid, but his eyes were wide open in terror. There were small handprints in the snow all around him. They searched Evelyn's cabin again. This time, they found fresh blood in the basement, Derek's blood, but Evelyn herself had vanished into the forest, along with whatever was left of her children. I left Minnesota the same day the roads cleared. I haven't been back since. But every winter, when the snow falls heavy and the wind howls, I still hear those small footsteps outside my window. And sometimes, late at night, I hear a sweet old woman's voice whispering, "Come play with us, Marcus. It's so cold out here alone." The silence after the children's laughter was worse than the sound itself. For the first few weeks after I returned home to Oregon, I kept every light in my apartment on all night. I installed new locks, bought a security system, and even slept with my old hunting knife under the pillow. But none of it helped. The nightmares came anyway. In the dreams, I was always back in that Minnesota forest. Snow fell so thick I couldn't breathe. Small hands would grab my ankles from under the drifts, pulling me down. Evelyn's gentle voice would whisper right beside my ear, "You left them, Marcus. They're still waiting for you." I tried therapy. The counselor said it was PTSD from hypothermia and trauma. She didn't believe me when I told her the children were real. No one did. The local news called it a tragic case of an elderly woman suffering from dementia who had wandered off in the storm. They never mentioned the skeletons in the basement or the fresh blood. The official report was cleaned up nicely. But I knew the truth. 6 months passed. Summer came and went. By the time the first snow fell again that next winter, I thought I was finally healing. I had started dating a girl named Laura. She made me feel normal again. One weekend in early December, we decided to go on a short cabin getaway in the mountains near Bend, Oregon, far away from Minnesota. It was supposed to be romantic, peaceful. The cabin we rented was beautiful, modern with big windows overlooking the snow-covered peaks. The owner, an older man named Mr. Whitaker, greeted us warmly when we arrived. He gave us the keys and a few warnings about the weather. "Storm's coming in tonight," he said. "Stay inside if it gets bad. Cell service can drop out here." We laughed and thanked him. That first night was perfect. Laura and I cooked dinner, drank wine by the fireplace, and fell asleep in each other's arms. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind against the windows. Then I heard it again. Soft, childish giggling coming from the living room. My blood turned to ice. I sat up slowly. Laura was still sleeping peacefully beside me. I slipped out of bed and walked into the main room. The fireplace had burned down to glowing embers. Everything looked normal. I was about to go back to bed when I saw it. Tiny, wet footprints on the wooden floor leading toward the basement door. Small footprints, like children's boots. My heart hammered against my ribs. I followed the tracks. They stopped right in front of the basement stairs. The door was slightly open. Cold air drifted up from below. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen counter and slowly opened the door wider. The stairs descended into darkness. I could smell damp earth and something sweeter, like old cinnamon mixed with decay. A voice drifted up from below. Evelyn's voice. "Marcus, you came back. The children are so happy." I stumbled backward, slamming the door shut. I ran to the bedroom and woke Laura in a panic. "We have to leave, now!" She thought I was having a nightmare. I was dragging her out of bed when the power went out. The entire cabin plunged into darkness. The storm outside roared to life. Wind screamed against the windows like it wanted to break in. That's when the knocking started. Soft at first, then louder. Small fists knocking on the basement door from the inside, then on the walls, then on the windows, giggling everywhere. Laura started crying. What is happening? I grabbed my keys and her coat. We ran for the front door, but when I opened it, Evelyn was standing on the porch. Snow swirled around her. She looked exactly the same. Silver braided hair, gentle smile, thick shawl. Behind her stood 3 small figures, holding hands. "You left without saying goodbye," Evelyn said softly. "That wasn't very nice." I slammed the door and locked it. We ran to the back exit, but more figures waited there too. Children, dozens of them now, all with black, empty eyes and frozen smiles. Laura screamed. I dragged her upstairs to the loft bedroom and barricaded the door with the dresser. We huddled together as the knocking grew louder. The walls shook. The children were singing now, an old nursery rhyme, distorted and wrong. Then came Evelyn's voice right outside the bedroom door. "It's so cold out here alone, Marcus. Won't you come play?" The door began to crack. Small hands pushed through the wood like it was paper. Laura fainted in my arms. I held her tight, knife in my other hand, ready to fight until the end. The last thing I remember is the door bursting open and cold little hands grabbing us both. When I woke, I was back in my apartment in Oregon. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Laura was gone. There was a note on the table in her handwriting. "I can't do this anymore. You need help. I'm sorry." The police later told me Laura had been found frozen to death in her car 200 miles away, parked on the side of a mountain road. They called it a suicide. I knew better. I never go outside when it snows now. I keep my apartment at 90 degrees year-round. I nailed the windows shut. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the scratching under the floorboards, small voices whispering my name. And every winter, when the blizzard warnings come on the news, I know they're still out there, waiting, looking for the next lonely person who needs shelter from the storm. If you ever get trapped in the snow and an old woman offers you a warm place to stay, whatever you do, don't go inside. Some doors only open one way, and once you step through, the children will make sure you never leave.